Alright guys, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video here in the new Lightfall expansion. I haven't gone too deep into this yet, but we've gotten to play through the first intro mission, and then the last video I put up was just kind of going over what's new, what did they change, what did they add, which if you haven't yet jumped into Lightfall, or you just didn't want to have to sort through it yourself, you can certainly pull that up as a reference. So that brings me to the point of today's video, and this is going to be something a bit different today, and this is going to be quite specific. I have been a Warlock main for a long time, and today I wanted to go over a couple of good Warlock builds specifically for the Void subclass. I will be doing videos on builds for the other subclasses as well, and eventually I'll get around to doing it to the other character class types as well, the Titan and the Hunter. But as I am a Warlock main, I know the Warlock class very, very well, and today I wanted to kind of walk you through a setup on a couple different routes you could go, assuming that you have the parts and weapons in question and armor in question. So the first of those I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to swap over to this first Void. I have two Void loadouts saved. So the first one of those revolves around Nezerac's Sin, the exotic Warlock helmet. If we drill into this helmet, we can read its ability: Void damage kills increase ability energy recharge rate. So that is going to be our rate on our abilities that are tied to Void. So kind of the shtick and setup for this, I have it paired with very specific setup on the subclass structure itself, as well as specific mods to kind of tie in and specific weapons. So the build that I have, the ability, I like the Healing Rift. I find that the most useful in general, especially as a solo player. I like the Burst Glide Jump, the Pocket Singularity, that is our default melee, and then we have different grenade options, but I do like the Vortex Grenade. It does deal a lot of damage. Obviously, there's a lot of different ones we could go down, and all of them are viable, but I find in general that the Vortex Grenade works the best on most Warlock builds. Secondly, we're going to go into our aspects. Now, there's a few different ways that you could do this. I would always recommend Chaos Accelerant. This is one that is the one that I think is the most critical for pretty much any build. And if you read about it, it tells you a bit. Press and hold the bumper to overcharge your grenade, makes it deadlier and more effective. And on Vortex Grenades, which is our specific setup, it increases the size and the linger duration of that vortex. So it really does crazy, crazy damage, and of course that will pull enemies in. So very powerful in and of itself. Now on this first loadout, I keep Child of the Old Gods. I do swap to the different aspect on a different build, but on this one, when you cast your Rift, it creates a Void Soul. It's kind of like the Arc subclass little Arc Buddy, but it's a Void version, and when you are damaging targets with a weapon, the Void Soul will fly to them and do damage to them and weaken them, which what that does is it gives you back class ability energy, and we get grenade and melee energy if we're using a Healing Rift. So that's another reason that I like the Healing and Power Rift, because it works synergetically with this. So kind of our cooldowns, the goal here is to get them lower and lower and lower so we can throw as many melees and grenades as possible. So for the fragments, the first one that I have is Echo of Expulsion. Void ability, Final Blows cause targets to explode. There's another one that I also like, but this one is pretty good at chaining. Not as important with a specific exotic weapon, so I would say use this one, or the other one that I would recommend is going to be Echo of Instability, which I do actually have set up on my second Void loadout. That is, defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds to your Void weapons. Hugely powerful. And if in doubt, let me just hover back over this. If you hover over, you're unsure what volatile is, you'll see it also pops up a little screen on the right. Volatile is negative status effect that it applies to enemies, and they will explode upon taking additional damage. So volatile rounds will pierce shields and barrier champions and also stun them. So we get a couple different side perks from having volatile rounds on our weapons. This, of course, says any void ability funnel blow will cause targets to explode, but if we swap over to the separate Echo of Instability and you're getting weapon-based kills, it's going to add void, which will make them explode upon taking additional damage anyway. So it kind of depends on the content that you're playing. I would say one or the other. In general, for most people, I do think the Echo of Instability is stronger, but for this first build, I'm keeping on Echo of Expulsion. The second one, Echo of Undermining, you'll notice that it does decrease your overall discipline, but it adds the weakened status effect to targets hit by your void grenades. As we can see up there, again, another pop-out box. If in doubt, weaken makes targets take increased damage, and it also makes them slower. So that is nice in and of itself, but then they also fire less accurately, so it makes it harder for them to hit you. Then the final I have is Echo of Remnants. Your lingering grenade effects, any of them that you choose, have increased duration. So this just kind of stacks negative effects on top of negative effects. This is kind of a does-it-all kind of build, but it's one that I think has a lot of synergy across it for most Void builds that you could use. So that is the overall setup there. Key to this build, and certainly there are other options, but if you have the Graviton Lance, this is a very OG weapon in Destiny 2. From Season 1, I believe. But what it does, it kind of functions like the Void version of the Sunshot hand cannon, where kills chain to different enemies. Sunshot does explosions that chain. This one sends out these little void balls that seek out additional targets. So it's almost like a void version of like how Osteostriga functions with spreading the poison around the enemies, in that it just chains to targets again and again and again and again. Then over here, Cosmology, this is kind of its base, a big perk here. Kills with a weapon cause enemies to detonate and spawns void projectiles that track targets. So that is what I'm talking about with the chaining kills. After you kill somebody, it'll detonate, it will spawn these little void balls that hop around and they start tracking and going after other targets. And especially if you have a bunch of just base level adds, it'll just chain and chain and chain and chain and wipe out big swarms of them in just a few shots. So very cool ability on this weapon. If you hover over and you happen to have the Masterwork version of this weapon, you'll also notice that it gets base Vorpal added on it. That little icon on the top, that is Vorpal weapon, so it does increase damage against bosses, vehicles, and guardians with their super if you're playing PvP, and you can also use it to break the shield of combatants or guardians in their super, and you will get an overshield for doing so. So very cool, old school weapon. This is one that got buffed, I think last season, maybe the season prior to that, but it's definitely been viable again. I've pulled it out a lot over the years. As you can see, I have defeated 8,500 enemies with it. So yeah, this is one that I pull out often, a very good gun. And this helps kind of feed into the rest of the setup on this build. So Nezi's Sin is going to be our exotic armor piece of choice. Void damage kills increase ability recharge rate. That is void damage of any type. That is weapons, and that is abilities, so our melee or our grenade. Now, the base default on this grenade right now is a minute 57. The base default on my melee here is a minute 10. So one will come up quicker than the other. And then if we go through the mods that we have equipped, these all also work synergetically to try to keep our abilities up as often as possible. So I threw in Discipline just because I needed more discipline based on the setup. Dropping Discipline, I want to be able to get the grenade back quicker. So I am sacrificing a little bit of damage resistance for getting the grenade back quicker. So Discipline mod on there, then Harmonic Targeting. It does improve target acquisition, accuracy, and ADS for void weapons, since I'm using a void weapon as my main. That is useful. The second one, I am using Heavy Ammo ammo finder. That's going to be to feed into my Void Falling Guillotine Sword on this specific build. Finally, Harmonic Siphon. This is really important and pairs great with the Graviton Lance. Rapid Void Weapon Final Blows create an Orb of Power. That is useful because of one of the seasonal artifact mods. So the Graviton Lance will just constantly kill rapidly, so we're constantly going to be spawning Orbs of Power. We will jump into the artifact to show you the synergy there, but let me just finish going down the rest of the mods. Again, pumping up discipline, grenade kickstart. I'm just doing one of those. When your grenade energy is fully expended, you gain additional grenade energy. The second one is causing damage with melee, reduces grenade cooldown. So since we're going to be using both abilities, we're just feeding more into getting the grenade recharged quicker. Yes, we could stack a double grenade kickstart, but since we're also going to be using our melee, I figured, and it comes back quicker, it will be just as easy to continue throwing additional energy back to the grenade by multiple sources. And then firepower, grenade, final blows, create orbs of power. So we've got another means of creating orbs of power. On this one, yet again, the discipline mod. Then we go with the emergency reinforcement. Whenever you collect an orb of power, we're going to get an armor charge, and when our shields become broken, we're going to get damage reduct. So that's just a quality of life item. There's a lot of useful perks in here, but this one is just kind of does it all. Unflinching harmonic aim. Reduces flinching while aiming with a void weapon, so that's going to be the based weapons that we're using. That is useful, and I stacked that twice. Sure, there's a lot of other things in there that we could have used, but I think that these are the most useful for this build. Scrolling down to our legs, this is where we've got a resilience mod equipped, then absolution. It reduces all ability cooldowns each time we pick up an orb of power. We already know that we have multiple sources of creating orbs, so this is going to continue adding more positive effects to us, further reducing cooldowns. The second one is Orbs of Restoration. When we pick up Orbs of Power, we're going to get a small amount of energy to the ability with the least energy. That is probably going to be grenades most of the time on this build. Then the final is Innervation. It reduces grenade cooldown each time we pick up an Orb of Power. So again, more Orb of Power and grenade cooldown synergy. So you can kind of see where we're going with this. We are stacking mods that are going to make our grenade come back quicker because they're super powerful. On my subclass mod here, our Bond, we went with another resilience mod. Then we've got Reaper. After we use our class ability, our next weapon final blow will spawn an Orb of Power. Super easy rolling Graviton Lance. Bomber reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. So that's our Healing Rift. And then finally, Explosive Finisher. If we do finishers, that will restore grenades. So we've got tons of ways to constantly keep energy flowing back in for this build to try to keep us throwing grenades as often as possible. And of course, synergy to be able to throw our melee as well. So very, very nice. And that is the mod setup on this build, and these are the two key components. Kind of whatever you want for your kinetic weapon. I'm sticking with SMG because I do have some artifact mods that are going to make that better against some of the higher tier boss types in the game. And then a Falling Guillotine, this is on my first build. So next we're going to drill into the current season's artifact. I've got the Overload auto rifles and SMGs, so this is one of my ways to penetrate through the Overload champions. Next, we've got Unstoppable Scouts. That's for Unstoppable champions. And then Anti-Barrier Pulse. So that's for Barrier champions. And obviously, we've got both SMG and we've got Pulse Rifle capabilities. The next one down here is Multi-Siphon Mods. That gives you access to armor mods in the helmet that combines Strand with Solar and Void. Yes, that is an option. I don't have that on yet. I'm going to use that on some separate builds. The next one I have is for grenade-based. Energy costs of all armor mods affecting grenades are discounted. Didn't really matter because I already have so much energy in my armor, but if you need it, they do have means for you to drop the cost of getting the mods that you want in your loadout. The next one on here, this I picked up related to my solar build, but then the one below it, volatile flow. This is key. Picking up an orb of power grants your void weapons volatile rounds. And we have 3 or 4 different ways of creating orbs of power. So that's why I didn't throw the volatile round on this first build, because I've already got it unlocked as an option for getting volatile rounds based on picking up orbs of power. And this next tier, there's a lot of good stuff, and all of these are useful as well. But the next main one is going to be down here in this final tier that I don't have unlocked, but the void weapon channeling. That is one that we will work into the build as well. But this is kind of the base core build here, guys. That is the artifact unlock mods, and you don't have to be all the way through the current season to quickly be able to get access to these. I have not played that much, but our core here is going to be this setup on our subclass in tandem with Graviton Lance, Nezerac, and all of the aforementioned mods. And then as a bonus on this Warlock Void build, I'm going to swap over to my second custom loadout. This is also a void build. This is very easy because I only have to point out the couple differences that I made. The first is the Echo of Instability that I swapped on. This is the one that gives you volatile rounds. And you'll notice volatile also, we already talked about this. Weapons pierce barrier champions and stun them. But volatile rounds will give explosions, and they will take additional damage when using our void loadout here. So this will proc anytime we defeat targets with a grenade. That will immediately pop volatile rounds onto our void weapons. So throw a grenade, fire with Graviton Lance, we get volatile and all of the perks related to it. And then the second change related to this build is, in lieu of Nezerac's Sin, we have swapped over to the Void Gauntlet Contraverse hold. So let me jump back up to the helmet. This is just a good helmet that I have. Very similar. Again, I have a discipline mod on this one to reduce my grenade cooldown. A special ammo finder, again, to help me pick up ammo for my, I believe I still have Falling Guillotine, Void subclass sword. Harmonic Siphon, Rapid Void Weapon, Final Blows, spawn Orbs of Power. Then again, Ashes to Assets, so we'll get super energy on grenade kills. So that is the new mod setup I have on my helmet. But then Contraverse Hold. This is another really, really fun, old school Void, former Void, Warlock, exotic piece. This is one I used to use back in the day with a handheld Supernova. It was super fun in PvP. They got rid of that. But now what I have set up on this is my discipline mod still. We've got grenade kickstart again. We've got our impact induction again. And I've doubled up on grenade kickstart. So when it's fully expended, you gain grenade energy and a double stack. Now, the nice thing about this exotic piece is this specific little shtick down here, the chaotic exchanger. That is the main perk that this item has, and it's resist incoming damage while you're charging your void grenade. So while you're holding it down on the bumper, and then it tells you the charged void grenades return grenade energy on a hit. So charge it, throw it, get more energy back. On top of it being expended and us already having mods to give us more back. So this will allow us to get even quicker recharge on our grenades. Everything else about the build is the exact same as on the prior, but I did make the change to one of the aspects here, and then we just swapped out Nezerac Sin for Contraverse Hold. So this would be my second recommended build for Void. Both of these are really, really strong, guys, and it just kind of depends on your preferences, play style, and what type of activity is you're playing, and what kind of difficulty level, and are alone or with a group. But these are both very strong, very fun, viable options that will keep your abilities coming back as quickly as possible, and especially with a focus on these dirty, dirty grenades. Guys, I hope you found this useful. There's a lot of different builds we could do, but Void is really strong this season, as is Solar. Of course, we still have the new Strand, so I'm going to be coming up with some fun Strand builds. But Void was my old main subclass for a long time. It's still fun, and ever since the Void 3.0 kind of update, it's just gotten stronger and stronger still. So these would be my two recommendations for very strong, viable Warlock builds to try out in Lightfall. Both good in PvP and PvE. Just depends on what you're going for. As a predominant PvE player, I would say these are probably stronger, would still be viable, obviously, in PvP, but I probably would use a different weapon loadout, which would kind of change the synergy with the equipment I would bring in. But regardless, guys, that is two good Void Warlock builds for you. I hope you find that useful. Certainly, if you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to throw them down in the comments, and I will have more builds coming up for the different subclass types. We will be starting with Warlock, but try them out, see what you think. Let me know down in the comments. I hope you find it useful. I appreciate you checking in, guys, and we will catch you on the next one.